joining. And if you are not aware or familiar with Inflectra, we are a company that's been around for 18 years. We just celebrated our 18th year anniversary. And the Rapise product has been around for more than 10 years. And it's been offered on the AWS marketplace since 2015. So you're looking today at a very mature product that has regular release updates. And what's special about today is the launch of a whole raft of smart AI feature functions that will show you in detail. And along with what we call the classic Rapise, those of you who are not familiar with Rapise at all, I will give you an introduction regarding Rapise as well in general. So Adam will do the demo. I'll give you a bit of an introduction. We have also joining us our CEO, Adam Salmon from Washington, DC, who's very passionate about the products even today. He tells me on a plane coming home from somewhere that if he's tired, he's just going to code for a little while. So he does like to still get his hands dirty, despite the fact that we have a very large development team in-house peppered around the globe. And Rapise is a product born out of our own development team over the years. And so when to consider using Rapise? For those Spira customers on the call, I guess we ultimately are here to delight customers and please a board or protect a brand. But in general, to optimize test coverage across as many devices and applications and browsers and platforms as you can think of, to improve performance of your products that you're launching or updating, as well as lift productivity of your team, free up time for higher value tasks instead of high volumes of repetitive regression testing or manual testing. And you may need quick turnaround between updates. Who doesn't? Complex requirements, when there's complex requirements such as highly regulated industry environments or even dynamic platforms like Salesforce. You may also consider Rapise when there's limited automation engineers or no automation engineers on staff, but need to and want to automate manual efforts. You may have strict compliance and regulatory needs, and your Shadow IT has grown out of hand and it's become a nightmare from a TCO, total cost of ownership perspective, and you're lacking the traceability and accountability. Or you may consider Rapise when you're trying to retain consistent knowledge of testing despite talent turnover. You often have teams using open source products out there and somebody leaves and then other teams are trying to understand the code base and there's no way of knowing where to begin. Or you may have current test automation tools that are just simply too open as well as costly. Rapise does all the things you would expect it to, from test creation, authoring, test execution, test reporting and debugging. I won't go through bullet by bullet, but you can have a glance and you can refer to the recording later. It's developed in our own language, the Rapise visual language, as well as JavaScript, but it is scriptless. It is completely zero code, codeless if you want it to be. You've got the option for those in-depth and experienced automation engineers who want to code, the option to code in JavaScript as well. And without draining the slide, I think it's very powerful to show you the different environments Rapise caters for and tests against. So it's just about every browser under the sun from a web perspective, every mobile device you can see there, all Windows desktop applications, APIs as far as REST and SOAP web services, and a raft of ERPs, so enterprise package products out there, many of which we have existing frameworks built into Rapise already. So Salesforce, Microsoft Dynamics in a whole list of different types of Microsoft Dynamics products. And you also have the ability to integrate Rapise on Spira Plan and access an additional 80 plus free plugins. We don't charge additional costs for plugins at all. And you can simply download them from our website to connect to Rapise and Spira. You also have the ability to store tests inside of Spira. We offer Rapise as a floating license SaaS model on Spira Test, but also as an on-prem product. You also get to have the ability to schedule and launch tests from within Spira as well. So you get additional capability once attached to our other product. As I mentioned, there's no code with the optional ability to code. And you can see some of the details around how to go about coding a manual test into an automated test. This is even without the smart AI feature function that Adam will show you a little later on this session, where you can just simply use plain language. So somebody like me who's never touched code in my life can go in and have the system automatically generate a test script, which is very powerful. Not only that, it gets smarter over time. The classic Rapise already has a very stable, robust record and playback function with a learn as you go functionality as well. So that already gets smarter, but with the additional AI, you get to have the Rapise system recognize your tests, your modules, etc., to learn and get smarter and or more accurate over time. So we will show you what that looks like and how to apply that. But it is also multimodal, recognizing everything from text, Excel, imagery, screens. So very diverse in that regard too. Many other features Rapise has, but also rich reporting inside of Rapise. And if you attach it to SpiroPlan, you can have any kind of custom reporting using OData to plug into things like Power BI or Tableau to get any kind of report you want. How will you benefit by using Rapise? Well, as I mentioned, it's scriptless, so zero code with the option to code. We've seen customers with a couple of automation engineers get started, set up a COE, and then scale across the non-technical teams, QA, QEs, and even other teams outside of QA altogether, so that they foster a culture of collaboration through democratization of testing for non-technical employees, so all striving towards excellence in quality. We see the benefit of speed. We have a customer, there's several of you on this call from Deltek, which is a large global ERP provider with several products like Vantage Point, Cost Point, Workbook, Spec Point, using Spira and Rapise to test and again, set up a COE environment, but driving speed and productivity, sometimes up to 30% or more. And this is classic Rapise without the AI feature functions leveraged and shared as a benchmark yet. It's very simple to learn and yet very complete, as you can see from the environment it covers, but also Telstra International is quoted as sharing an 80% improvement on test coverage results since moving off Selenium to test Salesforce on a regular basis. Both Deltek and Telstra have been APAC customers for a long time, many years running, so thank you very much for all the support. Deltek has even been part of the beta of this latest release, so thank you to all the team who participated. The product is very stable, not only in the record and playback, but we see customer over in Europe or US, Phenologics, stating that they've seen a 90% improvement in project planning accuracy as well. And all these links are available on our public website, as well as deep linked in this presentation. The fact that Rapise is simultaneously allowing you to test an array of environments, even with just one reusable script. So there's no need to rewrite test scripts. You can even extend and test hybrid or a mix of technologies. And you'll see that as an example with Customer ProTech, calling out some productivity gains, testing Microsoft. So when Microsoft do an update, ProTech, who leverages all of their consulting services on everything from Microsoft Dynamics to 365, are able to do these updates very quickly, so there's little negative impact towards their customers, and it gives them a competitive advantage. We see Rapise giving you the ability to be fully synchronized, so stay in sync without script changes and no need to rewrite tests every time an application changes. It is also secure, so the Land Registry Authority of the Philippines, Codeless, together with our partner ITPI, have found that security was a byproduct of using Rapise, and you'll see why in the case study. But basically, Rapise is an on-prem product offered as a SaaS model, and you have the ability to go private cloud as well, so you don't need to share your data openly to a web browser. And you get the full governance and traceability with Spira baselining as well. And smart AI, as I mentioned, assisted test generation in many ways. Code generation using plain language is just one of the many benefits in 8.2, as you will see. Rapise is easy to learn as well as very well supported, not my comment here, but from customers. We offer free responsive email support, direct access to Rapise solution engineers via the support email, free self-paced online training via Inflectra Campus. All up, there's 8 to 10 video modules of learning, and then off you go. You're able to get going and start using Rapise. And those that are automation engineers or QA experts will find they may even be able to skip and speed through the 8 to 10 hours of training. We have a very active user community with hundreds of articles, as well as tips and tricks, task recipes shared publicly on the knowledge base via the support tab. And it is not gated. It is completely open. You'll even be able to cut and paste custom reporting scripts and many other time-saving areas. We also offer interactive training accelerators. You can have a look at the different service packs we offer. Some of these are executed by our resident in-house trainers and solution engineers, as well as our partner network. We have a vast partner network certified on Rapise. So I'll call out DevOps One, who is joining this call today. We have NCS, we have Planet. There's several other partners that are looking to be certified on Rapise as we scale this product in the market with the AI feature function benefits. We have the product offered as SaaS, as I mentioned. It is all AWS enterprise service level agreements. We are an ISVA partner of AWS. And as I mentioned, if you happen to have an AWS enterprise agreement, all of the data consumption on Rapise can count towards your agreement. All we'll need to do is have your license number to enter, and off you go. We even recently had a large bank in Brazil sign up for a large contract through AWS Marketplace to bypass the procurement process, given they already have an enterprise agreement there. And as I mentioned, there's no hidden cost for any of the plugins. We offer them for free. And you have dedicated regional customer success teams peppered around the globe, such as myself. You have the flexibility of being able to scale up or down on different engagement models. You can go from fixed to floating. You can go for different payment options with month-by-month credit to annual multi-year discounting, and different hosting and different plans are available. You can try Rapise yourself simply by putting your email address on the free trial link on our website. And we also have transparent pricing. So you can have a look at the full list of roughly how much it costs to use Rapise. It's about $200 to 300 depending on the volume and the tenure of contract, but very reasonable pricing there as well against competitors. And the roadmap is 100% driven by our customers. So the next release is just around the corner, and there's many new updates that will happen. You can read the full backlog on the roadmap as well on the website. So very transparent and driven by you. So as I said, customers have shared some very positive feedback on the support. That has been second to none, especially for those that may come from a manual testing environment, a little bit timid around how to navigate through a test automation product. You have the full support there. We also offer some other testimonials on the website, but you can see coming from a QA/QC team, then scaling automation testing across the organization, found by Kent to be an excellent tool for creating automation tests, and offers many functionality with flexible pricing. And last but not least, powerful software test automation platform with the flexibility to extend and customize as well, with good support and hand-holding during crisis, but hand-holding during learning and onboarding as well. So I will defer to Adam on the live demo, but again, feel free to ask as many questions as you please so that you get the most out of us today. Thank you.
Thanks, Camille. That's a great introduction. Rapise has been part of the Inflectra family, as we said, for about 15 years now. And we're very excited about this latest release. The AI functionality has proven to be a game changer. We've been talking to various customers and prospects around the world. I was in Vienna a few weeks ago for Automation Star, which is one of the premier automation test conferences in Europe, and we were showing Rapise and Spira live at our booth and getting amazing feedback. It was like an assembly line of people coming in to look at the different tools and really good reviews. So for today, I'm going to show you actually, because we have time and because I think AI is such an important topic, I'd like to talk a little bit about AI across the life cycle. And also, as Camille mentioned, Rapise and Spira, though they are different tools, they're really part of our enterprise suite. They obviously do work well, do exist separately, but they work best together. I'll show you the fact we've got dashboards in Rapise which show Spira information and vice versa. It's really one integrated suite, which when you put them together, gives you extra value. And there's AI functionality infused throughout the entire suite. So as you think about DevOps and testing as all part of the software development lifecycle, we're seeing AI throughout the lifecycle, whether that's in co-pilot tools for development, test automation, and then test planning. So I'll show you a little bit of how we can use AI across the lifecycle, starting with Spira and then going into Rapise and showing some of the agents and the new functionality. And then I'll show you some of the classic Rapise for those who are not familiar with that tool whatsoever. So first of all, just to guess a little bit of a taste test with what's in Spira before we jump into Rapise, as an AI platform, we're able to use different models. So I'm going to be showing you some examples today using we're using OpenAI models just for ease of using in the demo. We do support the full range of AWS models like Anthropic and Claude and Llama as well. So we expect customers to use potentially different models for different use cases and depending on which data privacy regimes they want the data to be stored in as well. So first of all, when you start looking at Spira, we have the different AI plugins available on the Spira Apps Marketplace. These are free plugins that you enable in the application. I'll be using the OpenAI one today. But as I mentioned, we do have AWS Bedrock, which gives you Llama and Claude. And we also have Azure OpenAI. So if you're an enterprise Microsoft customer, you've got a Microsoft account, you can simply use the Azure OpenAI one to connect into your secure Azure environment and run and make sure all the data being sent into the model for the AI is being retained in your environment. Same thing for those people using AWS. If you're using an AWS account, you have models available through that, we can use your models. Otherwise, the easiest is if you're neither of those customers, you can just use the basic OpenAI model. None of that data is being used to train the model, even in the regular OpenAI as well. So it is safe for use. So whichever model you have configured, if you go into Spira, first of all, typically the start of any testing activity is requirements. So the first thing we want to do is take some requirements, build some manual test cases, maybe identify some risks, and then the next step will be to take that manual test case or test scenario and then automate that. So I'm going to show you that end-to-end process. So let's go ahead first of all, and I'm going to go in here and create a new user story / requirement. So I'll just choose a simple example. You see I've done some other examples already. So as a customer, I want to be able to, and we're going to be using our sample application, which is our library information system, which is, it's like an online library. So let's say as a customer, I want to be able to borrow or check out a book from an online library. So that's my requirement written in the user story format. If I click on that, traditionally, what I would do is take that and I would now want to maybe think of some scenarios, how to test that. I might want to think of how to build some test cases. So using the AI functionality in Spira to start with, I can automate that by just using the new AI functionality and say, let me generate some test cases. So by clicking on that button, what it's doing is it's taking the name of the requirement and it's sending that to our large language model, and it's going to be generating some test cases. It did that, and it's building them out. Give it a few seconds to finish. Okay, there you go. And if I click on the test coverage tab, it's taken that name and it's turned it into, in this case, 5 different test cases. So it's created 5 cases. The first one is an invalid case. So there's a mixture of positive and negative test cases. So checking out a book with invalid credentials, so I couldn't log in. Checking out a book where I've reached the maximum number of books I can check out. Checking out a book that is not available. Checking out a book successfully with valid user credentials. Checking out a book with valid and the data is correct. So we've got a mixture here of positive and negative cases. If I click on one of these examples, not only has it built out my test case, it's also built out my test steps. So it's built out a relatively detailed scenario with expected results and sample data. And so by doing this, and again, it's taken about 6 steps, about 5 or 6 test cases. So it's created about 36 to 40 different data elements combined. That would have taken me as a human probably an hour to write all this, maybe a bit longer, maybe 2 hours. It's done in a few minutes. Now, obviously, this is not going to be exactly what I need, but it's going to be close. It's going to save me a lot of time. I can go in here and make changes, but it's already given me a structure to work with. People using this functionality have said it typically saves them, 60 to 70% of the time it would have taken to create all this information. If you're following a BDD methodology, we can also do the reverse, do something similar, and we can actually build out BDD gherkin syntax as well. To do that, I just need to change this requirement to a use case type. We'll use a story type, hit save, the icon changes, you can see that right here. And I can now go into the ChatGPT option and say generate scenarios. It's sending the same name of the requirement to the large language model. Once it's finished, it will then populate my scenario section down here. And that's given me a nice gherkin syntax series of both positive and negative. So it's got my positive case at the beginning, then it's got my overdue case, my maximum limit case, my successful case, and my unavailable book case. So again, a mixture of positive and negative cases. This would have taken me probably a significant amount of time to write. It is color coded. Some of that's being done by the AI. Some of that's actually being done because I have this other plugin available, which is my BDD plugin. It's another one of the Spira apps from our marketplace, which I happen to have loaded. I forgot I had it running, and that's automatically color coded my gherkin as well. So you can actually mix and match different Spira apps in your installation to customize the functionality and get combined functionality, which is really exciting. So I've got my test cases, I've got my scenarios. Before we think about automating that, one other thing we might want to do is think about what are the risks around this functionality, if there are any risks. As we start to look at methodologies like risk-based testing, having a risk identified can be a useful way to understand what might need to be tested. So we do have that option in our Spira Plan and Spira Team editions where I can identify any risks. So using the power of generative AI and large language models, I am generating a series of project artifacts from this one requirement. All I had to enter, remember, was this one line. From that, it has generated significant amounts of useful information. If I go into the section here, it has defined multiple different risks that could be to do with the functionality I'm going to be building. Everything from availability of books, payment processing issues, there's fine management, user interface complexity, user visibility, downtime, regulatory risks. So there's a bunch of different risks identified, scalability. If you click on one of the risks, there's even the opportunity to use the AI to go one step further. So let's say there's a user experience risk. You can go in here and use the AI to even generate mitigations. So it'll actually mitigate the risks. And we can then use this in our risk-based testing plan to optimize what tests we should be doing.
So Adam, we have a question from Ashok. Is the requirement like an instruction for chat to generate scenarios? Can we prolong the requirement statement to have more coverage in test case?
So it's not currently, it's not an interactive assistant. It's a single shot large language model prompt. So what we do is we take the name and we basically send it to the large language model. But if you want to have more information being sent, which is often the case, there's the option to include other fields. So by default, it only takes the name of the requirement. One of the benefits of doing that is if you have information that you might not want to share with the AI, you can put that in the description and then only share the name. If, on the other hand, you want to have additional information that you want to share with the AI to make the generated tests and increase the coverage, as the question I think is asking, we can put information here in the description field. And then to enable that functionality, we would go here in the settings, and in the Spira app settings, you can simply go in here and tell it, actually, I want to include the descriptions as well as the name. Other things you can do on these settings, since we're on this page, is you can also change the model. I'm using GPT-4o Mini. That's a pretty good model for text-based processing. It's quite inexpensive. It's also quite fast. If you've got a more complex situation, a more complex application, you might want to use a more expensive model, a model that maybe takes a bit longer, uses more tokens, but it may give you more elaborate results. The other thing people have often asked me is, well, this application that you're doing the demo for today is quite a basic one. It's a book library system. If you look at some of my other examples, they are things like, booking flights, booking hotels. If you look at my list, let me go back a second. These are examples that a large language model would understand. But what if I'm building a more complex system? Maybe I'm building a train, signaling system for use on a rail network. Well, there's a good chance that a untrained large language model doesn't have enough context for that. And that's where you then want to use a trained model, where you've taken a generic large language model and you've pre-trained it with your data. And that's one of the benefits of using, for example, OpenAI hosted in Azure or Llama or Claude hosted in Bedrock, because you can host that large language model. You can then give it additional data relevant to your business that's not in the standard model. And then when you connect Spira to it, you would use that model instead of the generic untrained model, or just, I guess, you fine tune the model to be clear. So you do have that ability as well. So for many of our customers working in general business applications, a standard large language model will be beneficial and useful by itself. People working in more specialized apps might want to consider a specialized trained or fine-tuned model, and you could try both out and see which works better for you. Any other questions so far? Okay, so that's some of the functionality in Spira. There's one other piece of functionality I'm going to show at the end as an extra bonus for today, but I'm going to hold to the end for that if we have time. Let's move now into the other application, which I mentioned is Rapise. So Rapise and Spira do work very closely together. This is Rapise over here. And just to demonstrate how closely they do work together, when you use Rapise, it does have a Spira dashboard built in. So you can actually navigate a lot of the key information from within your Spira instance right here from within Rapise. So I can browse different projects. I can browse the test case library. I can look at my test sets. So a lot of the functionality in Rapise ties to data in Spira and vice versa, test parameters and all of that. If you look over here, I've created a test framework ahead of time. So before the demo, I went into the system. This is, again, the Rapise editing tool. I went in here and I created a new framework. And I've created a new framework with two different test cases, one called login, one called logout, and one called simple test. Each of these is essentially a different test that gets bundled together into a suite or a framework. And these tests are mapped to test cases in Spira. That's why they have the same icon. And you can actually see them in Spira, you can see them in Rapise. And when you make a change in Rapise and save it, it gets automatically uploaded to our cloud version or on-premise version of Spira. So your data is always maintained. That's also really good if you're working with a colleague and you're going to make changes and hit save. It's immediately synchronized. So you're both working on the same sheet of music at the same time. And gives resiliency as well. And the fact that that first one is red means it's failed, and the fact that the second one is green is passed. So before we talk about AI, I think it'd be useful to orient you a little bit in Rapise itself, how it works, so you know how it all fits together. So in Rapise, you have these different test cases. And so a test case is a series of actions performing to a part of an application. So an application is, in this case, is going to be this web application. As Camille mentioned in the demo earlier on, Rapise is a general purpose testing tool. It isn't just limited to web applications. It can do mobile, it can do desktop, it can do APIs, mainframes. It can even do combinations where you have an embedded browser inside a desktop application or even the reverse. So it lets you do some complex scenarios and use cases which other tools might struggle with. The other benefit would be whether it's mobile, web, desktop, or API, the UI you see here is identical. I don't have to learn different tools for different platforms. And the way Rapise looks at the world is in terms of objects. So an object, in this case, we're doing UI testing, not API testing. So these objects that you see here, these are basically windows or pages in an application or a desktop app. And under them are the individual UI elements. So for example, this is the library information system, which is this application over here. If I was to look at the login page, that's over here. I can look at any of these objects on the page, and Rapise has what's called learn mode. Learn is when you can click on the record button and you basically just touch all these objects and it adds them to Rapise. So you're basically telling it what's significant. I care about these navigation buttons. I care about the login button. I care about these two text boxes. I don't care about this, border box. I don't care about some of the text legend. That's not important. So you basically just learn everything. And once you do that, I did this ahead of time to save a bit of time. These objects appear right here on the page, and they're grouped by the window they're on. So these are on the login page. If I click in and log in later on, we'll see these are some of the other links I'll be interacting with. So we're basically grouping them by a logical container. Now, one thing to think about is, well, how do I know this is actually the same thing as on the page? So we have a handy feature in Rapise where anything that you've learned, you can click on this button and you can bring up the page and you can do what's called Flash. Flash basically says, bring it up, there it is this the same thing as on the page? And it will basically highlight it in a red box and show it. Let me do it again. I think I minimized the window at the exact wrong moment. There you go. So as you can see, it highlighted the login button in red with a red border. Let's try another one, Flash. Okay, so that verifies that what Rapise, when you learn the object that Rapise found, it matches what you expect. If for any reason it fails, maybe the application has changed, or maybe you didn't learn it correctly, or maybe you thought you learned this text box, but you were slightly below it, and you learned the background. You can always just quickly go right-click and go relearn. So if ever you need to reconnect something on the page, it's very easy to do that. Question, yeah?
Santiago's asking, can Rapise handle test cases that pass through virtual machines?
That's a great question. Yeah, Rapise can definitely do that. Rapise does need to be installed on the virtual machine. So Rapise is connecting to the application and it's connecting with the object in the browser in this case. It might be a desktop app or a mobile app. But the key is if it's testing, say, an application running on a virtual machine, Rapise itself needs to be installed inside the virtual machine. It connects to Spira, which can be outside the virtual machine. You don't install Rapise on another machine and then bring up an RDP session. Repeat, because that won't be an actual real application. That's just a graphic image. So that's one important distinction is you can do that. It needs to be installed on the virtual machine. And that's one of the other benefits of Rapise over some other tools is that we don't charge for the playback. So if you have what are often called ephemeral, as you pronounce it, virtual machines, you don't have to pay for licenses for every single virtual machine you're playing it back on. So if I'm a developer, I've got the Rapise development tool. This is the IDE. This is how you build the tests. I'll show you. We'll do that in a second. This is the developer tool or the authoring tool because it doesn't necessarily mean you're a developer. I pay for a license for this. We have floating licenses or fixed. But then when I play it back, I don't need a license to play it back. So if I've got 100 virtual machines, I can deploy Rapise using a script on all the machines. They get spun up like an AWS EC2. They get spun up. They do the testing. They get destroyed. You don't have to worry about license keys and all that complexity. And so it's really easy from a DevOps standpoint or CI/CD standpoint, where you're going to deploy Rapise on a virtual machine that might only live for about 10 minutes while you're doing the testing, then it's destroyed. That way, it really keeps your cloud costs down as well. You don't have to keep these long-running machines to do your testing. So, and also the floating licenses mean that if multiple developers are working on virtual machines, also makes authoring really easy too, because you don't have to worry about license management. So a lot of benefits with Rapise on virtual machines, but the key is it should be installed on the VM itself. And actually, if you're using AWS, we do have it on the marketplace, which Camille mentioned. That lets you rent it by the hour as well. So if you don't need an application and installation and all that, we've taken care of that for you. You can rent an AWS AMI, and that's even easier. The machine comes pre-installed with the software, all pre-configured. You can just create as many as you want, destroy as many as you need. Very flexible from a provisioning standpoint.
Another question from Ashok regarding it handles the web application testing, but is it useful around network and security testing? Ashok, the answer is yes. We do have customers even on this call doing exactly that.
Yeah, it's not doing cyber testing, but what it is doing is testing functionality while you're doing that. So, for example, if you've got an application that's running over a network, you can test that the APIs are working. You can test that the UI is performing. It's not necessarily testing network traffic live, but it's testing the application and the application's generating network traffic. From a cyber standpoint, it's not a vulnerability scanning tool, but one of the key things we often find is if you make changes to your application to pass a vulnerability scan or vulnerability test, well, you may actually have broken the application. So it's important to run both a vulnerability scan, but also a functional scan effectively to make sure that although you fix that security bug, did you actually break the application? So really important from a sort of compliance standpoint, making sure that you didn't actually introduce bugs by adding, by locking something down from a cyber test. We've basically given you a little bit of an outline of how Rapise looks at the objects. So these objects are basically things on the page. The next thing is, what do the tests look like? So if we talk about Rapise Classic, so pre-artificial intelligence, tests would look something like this. So this is a test here. So basically, you have actions where you can basically say, open something, click on something, do something, and you can drag items from over here. And you could say, well, I want to click on a login button. I grab that and drag it over here and build up my test. I can also record the test just by clicking the application and it builds that. But AI is taking us to the next level. So how does AI look? So that's how we would do things, in the previous version. But with AI, it's even easier. So with AI, we have two main modes. So I'll show you both. The first mode is what we call the interactive mode, and that's using our AI dashboard. So to initiate the AI dashboard, you go to View, and you go to AI dashboard. If you remember earlier on, we have a Spira dashboard. That's for connecting to Spira. We have a start page, which is all the tutorials and help. I'll get rid of that. And then the AI dashboard. So I'm going to move that over to the left. I'm going to close a few of my other tabs. Okay. So the AI dashboard lets me instantiate different chats with different agents we've got built into the tool. One thing to also mention is if I go to settings, I do have the option of connecting to a variety of different models. I can also connect to both a public OpenAI or Azure OpenAI. In the current version, we don't yet support Llama or Claude. That is also coming early next year as well. And so what you typically would want to do is start a conversation. So I'll go ahead and start a new conversation. I've got some already, but because I want to show you it, I'm going to start a new one just to make it clean. So you have basically a chat, which is generic chat. Then there's an AI command. That's very useful if you want to start actually creating some actual Rapise automation and have it build it for you. There's other use cases. For example, I want to be able to generate a set of test data. That's useful. I want to build some sample data. I want to run my test through. I'll show you that. There's also the option, if I've got some manual tests already in an image or a text file, I can also import those and read those. But let's start with the basic one first, which is an AI command. So I'll create a new agent. And so in the message, you typically would now write it in natural language. So because I know what objects I have on the page, I'm going to go ahead and say, go to the library information system. That's their website. Information system .org website, and log in with the username librarian. Let's see if it understands that. Librarian, wait for 5 seconds or 6 seconds, and then log out. So let's see what that does. So it now takes that natural language and generated that. And what it it took my text, sent it to the large language model, and our system is smart enough to take that. It's got a series of predefined prompts, and it takes that information together with all the object information on the left and says, these are my objects, these are my pages. This is what the user's trying to do. And then it also sends it. This is the entire command syntax of Rapise. Build me a test, and this is what it came up with. And what I would do is if I think it's correct, which usually it will be, or at least close to being correct, I can take that exact same information. I go over to my test grid, and I'm going to go in here, and this is what I did earlier on during a previous preparation for the demo. Pretend I never did that. I'm going to go over here back to my dashboard and say apply. When I hit apply, it basically appends that right here. I'll just insert a row to separate that from what's above. We'll come back to this stuff at the top later. I'm going to show you that in a minute. But this is basically taking natural language written in English, and it turns it into a series of automation scripts. And just to explain what it's doing, the first thing it does is open the browser. Second name is it types in the login and the password at these two boxes. It's going to click the login button. It's going to wait for 6 seconds. So it knew that's command is in milliseconds, so it knew to make it 6,000, not just 6. And then it basically does a log out. And if I go over here, I can then run that executable script. Again, it's codeless. I can go in there and I can go back to my application, which is over here. And if I go back to the home page, let me check. I think I'm going to need to be on this page. I can then say, play this selection. And let's see what happens. Oops. Uh-oh. It worked earlier on. Let's see what's going on. Let me just play this section here and play selection. Okay. So it basically logged in. It's going to wait 6 seconds. And it logged out. So that part worked. So the core of it worked. Now, the one interestingly, the first time I did this, I didn't get that first line. So with AI, it is trying to interpret what you wanted, what you wrote. Navigator open. I wonder if it's me. It's probably because I have the wrong URL. It may be the wrong URL. Anyways, interesting. So what you can also do is it's interactive. So I can also tell it, for example, please rewrite this script without the navigator line. So you can tell it in natural language to make changes, and it will hopefully come up with the same thing without that first line. So there you go. So it's able to listen. You're going to say to it, please do the exact same thing again. You can just simply say, here's what I actually wanted. The other thing you could even say is rewrite the previous script, but but wait 10 seconds before logging out. Well, actually, it's the first script because the second one doesn't have it. So let's see. So we can use, again, it's a conversation with the agent where it will actually take your script. And there you go. So it's again, it took, and that one actually is exactly what I need. And if I go back to my manual, to my test script over here, I can just delete what's here and regenerate it, delete. So it's pretty powerful, and you're having a conversation. So I'll just apply that, append. And then the next thing I might want to do, so I've got that part done. Let's say now I've logged in, so I've got to the next part. So let me log in, and I can use AI the machine just do that for me. So I'll just do hit a log in, and I'll play this to get me to the next screen, play selection. Okay, the next thing I want to do is I want to go to the book management screen, create a book, fill in some fields. So how would I do that? So I can do the same thing. I can go back to Rapise and I'll use my natural language agent. And I would say, I want to, go to the book management section, create a new book with name, oh no, let's say A Christmas Carol. So I'll do that. And one of the things people love off me is, they say, how should I think of this AI? Is it a tester? Is it a manual tester? Is it an automation tester? It's basically like, especially when you first start using it, you're going to find it's like an intern. It's someone who's knows maybe automation testing in general, but doesn't know this application, has never seen this application before. And it's going to get about 80%, 90% of it right the first time. And some things it won't get right. Some things it's going to get mistakes, it's going to make mistakes. And we'll show you that in a second when we get to the next part. And the great thing is you can give it feedback. There's a thumbs up, thumbs down feature where you can actually tell it, oh, that was really close, but can you make this one slight change? And when you do that, it actually updates the script and it actually adds learnings into the script. So that the next time you ask for something similar, it's going to apply those learnings. So as the more you use it on this particular application, the more you're training it to become a better assistant. So it graduates from being an intern to kind of an employee, I guess. And that's just way of thinking of it. Please.
Question from Renish. Is Rapise using its own driver for interacting with browser or using Selenium or Playwright?
Great question. In the current version, we are using we have a choice actually. So we have some native browser extensions. We also have the option of using Selenium driver as well. So you can use these are the native ones. These are the Selenium based ones. And I think Camille, you had a slide earlier on which said in 8.4, the next one in December you mentioned, that's got a playwright option coming as well. So that was one of the things that was on, if you remember Camille's slide, it said on the bottom left, what's coming in the roadmap. One of the is the option to use Playwright as well. So we do currently support native Selenium. For mobile, it's Appium. For desktop, it's a combination of tech. It's Microsoft Accessibility or Java Reflection and a few other different things as well. So it depends a little bit on for desktop, but for the browsers, it's typically going to be any of those three going forward.
Regarding add-ons, does Rapise support different versions of Dynamics CRM and Salesforce? Yes. What is the add-on release time for Dynamics Salesforce new release? I guess what is the lead time for any new release?
Right. So the question, just to clarify for I guess for everyone, I think there's two questions. One question is, do you support different versions, like going backwards? And then the second part of the question is, when they release a new version, what's the lead time for us to support that? I think those are kind of the two questions. So I'll answer those in slightly two different ways. So first of all, Rapise supports multiple versions of, let's take Dynamics as an example. We support Dynamics 365 operations sales, even the older, pre-365 versions like Nav, AX, and my brain has gone to the CRM as well. Now, when it comes to the cloud new versions, they're updating frequently. We will usually be current within a release of Rapise. So, for example, we release Rapise monthly. And so if a new version of it comes out, we release an update, depending on the scale of the change on the next Rapise release. Now, in many cases, it is a browser app. So depending what they change, many cases, the releases don't change anything. because it's just a browser app. And unless they make breaking changes to the grids or some of the controls, basically to the frameworks, then we may update the frameworks. We've also pushed the frameworks for these platforms onto GitHub. So another thing is we can actually push updates more frequently than the main release. So depending on, again, on what's required, if it's just a framework update, not a core system update, which it often is, then we can just post it to the GitHub, which will be more frequently. Otherwise, it will be in the next Rapise release. Sorry, it's a tongue twister. And in terms of Salesforce, we do support both Lightning, which is the current framework. We also do support older versions of Classic, although nowadays that's not as common.
I'll post the slides in the chat towards the end as well, so you can see in detail what is currently supported.
So just to show you the, so where were we? We were doing I've just created the script to create the book. We logged in, now we're creating a book. Just to show you how that would work, I'm going to go back to my test. I'm going to apply that right underneath. I go back to my AI dashboard. This looks pretty good. I'll say apply, I'll append it. And now what I've done, if I just add a line in between them, is I've got my second section here where I'm now going to be click on the book management link, creating a book, and filling in the name of the text. So let's go ahead and play this section. Oh, does not exist. So it found this is an example where the AI did not get exactly what we wanted. It says it couldn't find there's no just object called book management. So for example, you'll see that if you go here, book management does not exist. So it didn't quite get that right. So if you go to the list of items in the main navigation, you'll see it's actually book underscore management. So that's an example where it didn't do it correctly. And that's where we would want to give it feedback and say, actually, you didn't do it correctly. Or we could just simply manually change it right here like that. So again, depending on the complexity, if you want to train it, you will go into the agent, and I'll show you how you do the feedback in a second. But otherwise, if you find it doesn't exactly match, because the AI doesn't always on first usage, it's learning, use the right object, especially if you have multiple objects with the same name. I've seen it, for example, get confused between the submit button and the login submit button. They use the wrong one. Here we have the submit button for submitting a book. Here we have the login submit button for logging in. When I first did this script at the top, it actually used this button name instead. So you're going to be training it as you go, and it will get better. So that's an important thing about AI. It won't be perfect for day one. It is like an intern that you're training and gets better the more you're using it. Now, in terms of before I show you the next part, which is how you can use AI without any of the script at all, the other thing that's very common is I want to use this portion of my script and I want to be able to generate test data. So another use case, I'm just keeping an eye on time here, is that the second use case I want to show you is creating test data. So I've used the AI to take natural language and turn it into Rapise commands. I now want to use it to generate test data. So I'll create a data table. And let's say I want to create a list of books. Create, or please, I also like to say please, I don't know if you need to. Please create a book, a table of books with the name, genre, and author. These are the three fields I need. And it will do that. It's going to come up with a list of books. And I can use these in my test. Now, one thing I've sometimes found is that, well, actually, maybe I want certain kinds of test data. And so the great thing is if it gives you some data that you don't like, or is close but not perfect, you don't have to rewrite the entire prompt. You can just simply ask it to tweak it slightly. So there's a list of books. I'm going to post that into the table so you can see what that looks like. I'll put that right there. And it creates what's called a map. A map is a special Rapise table, and you can take a map and you can apply it to, so I'll just put book list to my test. Now, let's say you wanted more modern books, because these books are a real mixture. Some of these are quite old. So you can just go back in here and say, again, it's an assistant. Could you regenerate this list with books that are only 10 years old or new, or not older, are not older than 10, that were published, I think the right way of writing is, that were published less than 10 years ago. There you go. And so now it's going to generate approximately the same number of books, but it will be a different set of data. So if you want test data and it doesn't give you exactly what you want, I've done this before and done something like, can you give me the same list of books, but I want the ISBN number? And it just regenerates the same thing with the ISBN. So it's really useful for test data generation. Let me grab that data set, the Divergent Trilogy, that makes sense. And I'm going to put that, I'll put that as a second map down here. So I'll go back to my dashboard just to apply. and I'll put that right there. So I've got a second set of books now, which are much newer. So I'll just call those new books. Okay. Now, again, I don't know how much everyone knows the tool, so I'm just going to show you, regardless of whether you built this test using AI or manually, more traditionally, one of the most common things is to take a series of steps. So either that whole set of test steps, or maybe it's just the creation of the book. I want to run that multiple times. So in Rapise, without any code, I can do things like, and this is regardless of the AI, I can go in here and just say, wrap this selection in a loop. That means that body of actions is going to be repeated multiple times. I can then map it to my book and just say map it to my list of new books. I want the newer books, not the older books. And all I need to do now is replace my text here from a hard-coded value, which is the name of the book, and I want to just use my variable name. By doing that, I've linked this action, which is to type that text in the book name, and I've linked that to my grid of data, which is further down, which is right here, to this field, this column. So again, very easy to take data elements and data grids, map them to automation, very easy. So that's a second use case of AI. One is to generate Rapise commands for you without having to actually figure it out yourself. The second one is generating test data. There's some other use cases on the dashboard that I mentioned. You can do things like generating a simple list of data with like a single, not a table, but a single column. You can also take a manual test case description from an image or a text. So those can be quite useful. Another thing is, let's say you said, I've got my manual test case in Spira. It's already written in natural language. So if we go back to Spira for a second, and we go back to my test cases that you saw, they already kind of are in a natural language. Like this. So these are natural language if I go into it. Wouldn't it be great if I could take this natural language test step and turn that into automation? Well, we have that option as well. In Rapise, we actually have, I cancel that, manual steps. These come into Rapise automatically from Spira because of the integration. And I could take these here and I can actually use the AI functionality right here. That will take my 3 manual steps and turn that into AI steps. So what does that look like? When I do that, I take these manual steps. This will now be the third use case, which is I don't want to have a series of steps and turn it into automation. I want the manual test to be the automation. And so we have that option as well. So if I go now into my test, you'll see these lines at the top. That's where you're actually writing the test inside of Rapise using the new AI command. When you do this, you don't need any of this stuff that we have down here. So I'll just get rid of all this. So whereas before we were turning natural language into our codeless automation, the next level of evolution is we can not do that. We can simply write it in English and then just play this like this. This becomes executable manual test. And this sort of looks like magic, right? So how does this work? So first of all, let's just go back to my page. And if I go to that page and I go back to Rapise, if I hit the play button, it should hopefully work. Let's see. It did. Perfect. It's going to wait, I think, 5 seconds, not 6, and then log out. So that's very similar to what we did before, but the difference is there's no script anywhere. It's simply a series of AI actions right here. I can either write them directly in Rapise by typing it in, by going, AI, I don't know, log out, something like that. It's English, whatever you want. Or if it's already in Spira, you don't have to do that. You can just use that shortcut to take my Spira test step, and I can convert that with one click into this. But obviously, being AI, it won't always work the first time. It may need some editing and corrections. So if you do want to see what's going on, there is a way. So don't worry. If you click on this row where it says logging in to this URL with this login and password, I have kind of the option in this final cell to show the AI panel. And it's actually down here. That's showing you interactively what it's about to do. So it's a way to take the AI command that we write here and effectively preview what it's about to do. So it does give you the dimension to see what's going to happen before it happens. But unlike the other way, we don't have to maintain the script. It's simply implicit. And one thing just to mention is, or before I answer the question, just to say one thing: if you see the preview and it doesn't look correct because you're thinking, like, well, that's the wrong button. You have the option here to give it feedback, which I mentioned. You can either give it a thumbs up, which means yes, you're perfect, and it will add notes to itself to continue to do that, or you can give it the thumbs down and correct it, and it will then learn that the next time to make that change. So is there a question?
Yeah, we've got, can the AI function be used to convert existing test cases in Spira to a Rapise framework in bulk?
You can, well, let me think about that. Yeah, so you can connect Rapise to Spira, and you can create a framework and all the test cases will come in here as test cases. You can click on the manual steps button. That will give you all of the steps of that test case, and you can hit that button, and that will convert that one set of manual test steps into a script that looks like this, and then you can just play it. Now, obviously, you may need to then refine it and after the fact, but you could do that. Now, that's probably thinking like, click on the test case, click on the manual test, click on the convert button, which is here. So it's probably 3 to 4 clicks, I think, for each one. As to whether we could do that in a greater bulk, I probably need to defer that to our Rapise team to see if that's something we either can do or will add. But certainly, my understanding is that's the way you would do it currently. But it's a really good
If
question.
you literally type that question in, was it Santiago who asked the question to the support email address I just put in the chat, you'll get a response as well.
Right.
Anything logged in the support ticket also feeds into our roadmap, and we review that on a monthly basis across the team to see what gets prioritized in the next release or backlog. Another question from Ashok. So can we use ChatGPT through Spira to generate test cases based on requirement and then create automated tests using those steps in Rapise? The
Yes,
question is,
yeah, I think
that was
I
just
hope
answered.
I tried to show that. Hopefully that came through. So just to quickly show, yeah, you would go into Spira, you would go to the requirements, and you would basically here's the book one. You go in here, you use this to generate the tests. These tests then come into Rapise as something like this, and then you use this button here, and that will turn it into AI, which is here, and then you can just simply hit the play button. So
And
that's basically the goal.
does Rapise prompt you for any missing variables, details that's not letting it fully automate the test case?
What will happen is if it runs into an issue, so let's I can show you the real example. I deleted it, but if you remember, it gave me and I do want to show one more thing before we go. So let me do this, then I'll come back to my other thing. If you go here to my chat, which was the one for creating the book, it did create an incorrect. This here was incorrect. So let me go in here. If I put that into my test, I'll just place it down here. If I go back to my AI dashboard and I do, so if you do it this way and I apply this to right here, if I try and play this, it's going to give an error. What Rapise will do is on the playback, it's going to prompt you to say there's an issue. So I play that selection, it's going to come back and say here. So it says, what happened? Well, book management actually does not exist in the object repository. Either the object ID is misspelled or not loaded. Next steps recommended are what it says here. So it does give you inline contextual help where something didn't work correctly.
Sorry,
Yeah.
Adam, one last question. How Rapise handles
Okay.
non-automation friendly UI with poor locators or dynamically changing locators?
Yeah, that's probably a whole separate webinar on itself. So I can only give a short answer because literally we could spend another 20 minutes discussing that. Rapise has several ways to help that. First of all, when you record the test, it automatically learns the objects using multiple different locators and different locator methodologies. So if I click on an object, you'll see here, it's a little hard to see, I'll just make it bigger. That's how it's finding the item, sorry, it's using that locator. We can have it when it records use different locator methodologies so that it can be tailored to your application. So if it knows that certain locators are flaky, it will ignore them. So that's all. And then another related aspect is we have something called an application profile, which I think I have somewhere I defined. If not, I can create one. I don't think I have one. We have what's called a web application profile. It's basically a way to tell the application, here it is, the system, how your application looks, and is your application to certain types of locator not match, and we ignore certain things. So that's the second way. The third way is we have something called self-healing mode, which you can turn on. It's disabled by default, and that will actually let Rapise record using 3 or 4 different locators, and it looks for a percentage match. So if the label changed, but the position is good and the idea is still good, it will still get as a pass. So there's options to use what's called self-healing, where you're using a percentage confidence match that we don't need an exact match every time. There's pros and cons to doing that. That's why I say it's a longer conversation conversation, but definitely something we could talk about in a future webinar. One thing I just wanted to mention before we exit the webinar, I know we're a little over time. One new thing we've just been working on that's going to be released in the early new year through a partner is something called QV Scribe. It's a requirements analysis tool using AI again. So one of the things that we'll see here is this is my requirement, these are my test cases, this is my automation. One of the challenges will be, what if my requirement itself is incorrect? If I write bad requirements, then my tests are going to be bad or incomplete, and my automation is going to be incomplete. So one of the things we found, particularly for clients in industries where requirements are very important, engineering type applications, hardware, software, embedded systems in particular, but more broadly applicable as well. This new plugin that's also going to be a Spira app looks like this. It lets you analyze requirements and will let you score the requirement. This is a sneak peek. No one's seen this before. This is literally the first public display of it. So you guys are getting a preview. It's not ready yet. It's in development, but we can score requirements. And if you look at a requirement that we've scored, we actually will be marking it up and explaining why the requirement got a medium score or a low score or a high score, and will automatically suggest improvements. It will also find the inconsistencies between requirements as well. So again, part of using AI to improve the overall quality of your system, not just the testing, we are taking a step upstream and looking at requirements. So just to clarify, this is not yet available. It is coming out and is in addition to the ChatGPT plugin that I already showed you. It is in addition to what Rapise is doing and will be doing. It's another piece of functionality. There's another one coming, which is going to be around code quality and optimizing which test to run, which will be another Spira app. So the Spira app marketplace is going to have multiple different AI features and functions available. So that way it lets you optimize the quality of your lifecycle depending on what's important to you.
Basically, you can feed the requirements, and the requirements too will get smarter over time with the AI assistants.
And actually, one thing we're going to be adding to the ChatGPT plugin and AI plugin is also the ability to take a high-level requirement and drill and have it develop multiple low-level ones. It doesn't do that yet, but that's already feedback we've had, which is it's great taking your requirement and building tests. What about if I gave it a high-level epic and say, what are all the stories for this epic? And that's a good idea too. So we are going to be using AI more and more throughout Spira, throughout the entire user interface, not just what I've shown you today. What I've shown you today is literally what's live, but not what's in development.
Thank you, Adam. So to conclude, there's plenty of value in Rapise Classic version without AI turned on. I know some of the government customers are still a bit timid of turning on and leveraging the plugins of ChatGPT and other language models, but with AI, it is definitely supercharged. So specific speeds are mentioned in the case studies. If you'd like the slides or if you want to refer to our website, you'll see the statistics there, the metrics there as well. Thank you, everybody. Enjoy the rest of the week. Thanks, Adam.